On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there's having themselves a great day. Got new Q posts that have come out, and there seems to be a bit of a talk around the whole COVID thing and around opening up the economy and what some of the different governors are doing and some of the different facts that are starting to come out. It's actually pretty interesting, the picture that's being painted right now. And then with all the other distractions that are kind of happening right now in the media, I mean, certainly some rioting going on in Minneapolis, which is horrible. The incident that happened out there is absolutely deplorable. Absolutely. There's just a horrific thing that's happened out there. So I can absolutely understand why people are pissed off. That makes sense. There's a lot going on right now that seems to be trying to take some attention away from these other things that are starting to come to fruition. Post 4336, USA versus Japan, reconcile the differences here. Critical thinking. So we've got this cool Newsweek article where they're talking about Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has announced the end of the state's emergency declaration for the novel coronavirus pandemic. Just 851 deaths. They did surprisingly well. One thing that's kind of funny, and I think we've got a slide somewhere coming up here, you know, their population's just shy, a little more than a third of our population. And they basically reside in an area about the size of California. And they've had very few cases, considering how locked down they are, how confined they are. It's very interesting. Now, granted, Japan's probably one of the cleanest countries in the world, at least so I've heard. I've not been there. Love the country, love the culture. But again, interesting that they're taking that restraint off and they're opening up their economy. And they haven't had nearly the same problems we've had. For some reason, the United States should be a surprisingly good country. We're one of the worst. Why is that? And I don't think it's necessarily that the numbers are fully representational of the absolute truth, or at least what we assume them to mean. We'll see. We'll see how this plays out through this. Post 4337, expanding on the last drop, USA versus Japan. So he wants us to apply some additional information, which we're going to do. But let's go ahead and take that first. So the thing that really kicked in here, most important COVID-19 statistic, 43% of U.S. deaths are from 0.6% of the population. They've done some very interesting studies on this Forbes article. And so you got 2.1 million Americans representing 0.62% of the U.S. population. They reside in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. So, according to analysis that Greg Jervin and this person, conducted for Foundation for Research of Equal Opportunity as of May 22nd this year, in 39 states that currently report such figures, an astounding 43% of all COVID-19 deaths. So of the 100,000 deaths, 43,000 of them are because of these 0.62% of the population. 43% of all the deaths represent 0.62% of the population. Let's break that down a little bit graphically. I found a cool slide. And one thing I want to point out on this is kind of funny, but these are the percentages of deaths in nursing homes, right? 81%, good God. Washington, 61% is where it started. And some people are suggesting that maybe it got seeded there. Who knows for sure, right? But it is odd that it started there. It's odd the way it started there. California, 42%, Texas, 45%, right? A lot of people lost a lot of lives in nursing homes. 0.68 or 62% of the overall population have passed away, unfortunately, but in nursing homes. It's very strange how that played out. Now, the one thing I kind of wanted to point out that I thought was interesting is 13.8. If you look at this entire map, other than Nevada, which is 23.9, and it's significantly lower than anywhere else, I'd say everything else is pretty much 30 and above, right? 13.8%. And the one state right now that is definitely in the hot seat, and we've got some slides coming, definitely in the hot seat for the way they handled the COVID patients. In fact, they passed a law or a directive stating that these nursing homes had to accept these patients. Now, Cuomo's having fun backpedaling on that, and I've got some great facts showing him contradicting what he put in writing. So it's very interesting how it plays out. But I just wanted to point out the fact that New York only shows 13.8%, even though numerous studies have come out to show that the reason it was so severe in New York was because of how they handled the elderly in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Post 4338, expanding again on the last drop, USA versus Japan. Let me go back to Let me go back to here. Let that sink in. 42% of all COVID-19 deaths are taking place in facilities that house 62%. I think I covered all that. Why did our nursing home population suffer a direct hit regarding COVID-19 deaths? And that's really an awesome question. It seems like there was a targeting almost. I don't know. It's so weird. And I don't know if this was like, let's get rid of old people because they are expensive. I don't know. To me, it seems very strange that we put very super duper high risk people at even higher risk. We took their enhanced risk and made it higher. So you got New York, New Jersey governor. They both had orders pushing the COVID-19 positive elderly into nursing homes. The USNS Comfort capacity was 750 beds. They had plenty of beds. And New Jersey actually passed theirs after the Comfort was already in New York. Now, Cuomo passed his, I think, 5 days before, but he obviously knew the Comfort was coming, but whatever. But what other Democrat governors mandated same orders? And we're going to get a few examples. Ask yourself a very simple question. Was it known, common sense, and early medical reports that elderly communities were very at risk? Didn't we figure that out pretty quickly, especially with Italy? Right? Wasn't that one of the major takeaways that we got from Italy was it really heavily affected old people, like badly. Like the older you were, the way more dangerous it became for you. So why would 4 Democrat governors, I just happened to be Democrat governors? I don't know. But why did they push COVID-19, COVID-2 specifically? And that's an important distinction that they're bringing up because this particular COVID-2 variety is the one that has some interesting vectors in it that look that they can't find any existence of in nature. I don't know. You can make up your own mind. I'm not saying anything. But why is it that all these people, 4 Democratic governors that had infected patients, insisted that they push them into the highest risk area? Ignorance is a choice. This is a little bit of something that kind of flows through these posts. So again, 4338 finally. So again, continuing on, 43% of 100% nursing home deaths. CDC there's some discussion around how they're showing their death numbers. Now, if you go back and do a lot of research, and that's one of the things that they're kind of pointing out here, and when you hop into some of the Q boards, some of the people got a little bit angry around this, but ultimately, CDC always has had a number of deaths that were related to bronchitis and pneumonia. Now, bronchitis and pneumonia are the standard things that you die from when you get the flu. So the flu doesn't necessarily kill you, really. What the flu does is it weakens you down and then you end up getting some sort of respiratory pneumonia or bronchitis that ends up actually killing you. So in that case, our normal amount of deaths that we see every year, it basically averages. A lot of people have said over a long period of time they've taken averages, but if you really look at ebbs and flows, some years are good, some years are bad, but it goes from around 30,000 to around 50,000, and that's pretty much how many deaths we end up with flu-related. Now, that's half of the total CDC, or half of the total deaths that are being reported right now. There's discussion that maybe there's some inflation on those numbers for these reasons. So maybe some of the flu data is getting mixed in with some of this COVID data. Maybe. And that could, of course, help elevate these numbers. But the problem is even when you look at the elevated numbers, even when you look at these fake numbers, they're nowhere near the numbers that we were supposed to see. We were told by all the experts that there was going to be 2.4 million, 2.1 million. And as it's turned out, we're the worst in the world, which is still surprising to me, just blows my mind, but whatever. That either speaks to the fact that we've either got someone sinister, 4 Democratic governors, for example, working against us, which I don't know, or ignorance, okay, maybe, or what? Why? We're the best medicine in the world. We're the best medical stuff in the world. Why? Why? So many other countries did way better than us. Why? Makes no sense. So again, expanding on that last drop, a lot of people, I went digging, tried to find all sorts of crazy stuff. Anyway, long story short, one thing I had to point out, and I thought this was kind of an interesting point from one of the frustrated people in our audience, and I think he probably speaks for many of us, and I wanted to give him a voice. So ignorance is a choice. This really offended a lot of people in this post. And what they kept kind of saying is, why is data consistently changing in the past? Sometimes Wayback Machine may find Easter eggs. Ignorance is a choice. And I think some people got defensive and thought, well, maybe Q's pointing at us and saying we're ignorant. But I think what he's saying is that Democrat governors can't plead ignorance. So I'm just going to say that. But that being said, ignorance is a choice. This individual. Okay, no, it isn't. Allowing the MSM apparatus to continue to operate in the USA is, however, a choice. That's true, right? If patriots have all their crimes documented, then put an end to the madness and disinfo. Lock up the heads of CDC, MSN, NIH, and other orgs that perpetuate the madness ad nauseum. The narrative has spun way out of control. People are being ignorant of the facts, are victims of the CIA Mockingbird machine churning on people's perceptions 24/7, 365. This could be stopped if proof of their crimes exists. Blaming people being ignorant when they are under constant assault from MSN disinfo campaign is essentially victim blaming. And I want to give this guy kudos, like points. Like I agree. I 100% agree with you. I do agree that ignorance is a choice that some people choose to make. I was just talking to someone about the fact that I don't have kids. I don't want kids, and I like being ignorant of the fact that they change your life and they're so wonderful when you have them. But when you don't have them, ignorance is awesome. So again, it's a choice, and I'm choosing my ignorance. But in the case of what's going on in the world, I don't believe Q is saying we're ignorant. I think he's suggesting that the Democrat governors and mayors and other poor leaders that we have throughout this country are going to say, well, I didn't know. We used the best information we had. I don't know if that's good enough. And I think that's the point that Q is trying to make. So this is a picture that I don't want to keep up too much. Someone's very upset that their parent died in a nursing home in New York, and they're blaming Cuomo. And I absolutely get that. But the image just doesn't need to be shown. But at what point should this be reclassified as murder? Now, we're going to start to step into some specific stuff around Cuomo right now, and it's kind of interesting. And I think he's in hot water. And oddly, I kind of liked him. You know, he wasn't being a total dork to Trump, and, you know, they kind of seemed like they were working together, and I don't know. I was like, I kind of got respect for him. I like him a hell lot more than I like his brother, but whatever. That being said, he's definitely stepping into all sorts of landmines right now, and it's kind of fun to watch. Again, the show must go on, but it's going to continue to enhance over the next few months. So at what point should this be reclassified as murder? At what point is ignorance, common sense no longer a valid excuse? Really, the big question is at what point do we maybe think that evil is part of this? It could be, couldn't it? So Michigan, we love to see her. She's probably the biggest tyrant that we're currently aware of as far as governors go, right? Like, I'm going to lock you down, and then I'm going to lock you down on top of the lockdown, and then I'm going to actually arrest you for not having a face mask on in jail that I put you in and didn't give you a face mask. Like, she's crazy. I'm making stuff up, obviously, but Michigan's hapless governor continues deadly COVID-19 nursing home policy. So she's also, I guess, one of the 4D governors that they want to have kind of pointed out. And again, that's basically what they're saying. It's bad enough that Governor Cuomo instituted a dangerous policy that forced nursing homes and long-term care facilities to accept COVID-19 positive patients against their will. It's bad enough that this policy appears to have led the rampant spread of coronavirus in New York homes, among its tragically thousands of those facilities. And oddly, she's doing it too. Post 4340. At what point should this be reclassified? Again, continuing to build this case against these 4Ds. That was always the big thing. We needed to let them show their hands. There's so many people that are mad that this isn't happening faster, but there's a few problems with it. One, President Trump and Q can't just put on their badges and go and start arresting people. You can't. You just can't do that. Also, deep state, swamp, very big, very wide, lots of tentacles. Kind of can't do that either. There's way more complexity to this operation than anybody's aware of. And I'm probably way more complexity than even, people directly involved, right? Like, because there's all sorts of sides to this that they don't necessarily know what the enemy's doing, but there's a lot going on around this. So again, at what point do we classify this as murder? Now, I want to point out something before we listen to Cuomo's words contradicting himself. When we look at his directive on March 25th, and again, I think it was the 30th that the Comfort showed up. So 5 days before the Comfort showed up in New York, he puts out this advisory. The important part to point out here is this little paragraph here. Let's zoom in for fun, make it giant. No resident shall be denied readmission or admission to the NH or nursing home solely based on a confirmed or suspected diagnosis of COVID-19. So if I've got a patient that I want to shove in your nursing home and they're confirmed to be COVID positive, or we suspect they might be, you can't say no. You can't turn them down. NHs are prohibited from requiring a hospitalized resident who is determined medically stable to be tested for COVID-19 prior to admission. So not only do they have to accept this person that may or may not have COVID, they can't test and confirm. So even if they aren't sure they have COVID, one of the most contagious person-to-person things that we've seen in a long time, they can't test it, they can't verify, and yet they have to take them and put the lives of others at risk. This one paragraph speaks volumes about what these nursing homes were under the impression they were supposed to do. So here's where it kind of gets interesting. Let's listen to Mr. Cuomo basically perjure himself. It's not perjury because he's not on trial. Publicly he is, but
they don't have the right to object. That is the rule, and that is the regulation, and they have to comply with it. And the regulation is basic common sense. If you can't provide adequate care, you can't have the patient in your facility. And that's your basic fiduciary obligation, I would say ethical obligation, and it's also your legal obligation. If you can't provide adequate care, the person must be transferred. If you have COVID people, they have to be quarantined, they have to have separate staff. That's the rule. If you can't do it, we'll put them in a facility that can do it.
That's the rule, right? If they have COVID, you have to do X, Y, and Z. But you can't ask me if they have COVID. You can't test if they have COVID. But if they do, you should do all these things. Really? Is that how you're rolling, bud?
That's the rule. Now, when the person gets transferred, then they lose a patient, they lose that revenue, I understand. But the relationship is, the contract is, you have this resident, you get paid, you must provide adequate care.
And that's how that rolls, right? So again, I think he's kind of perjuring himself right out of the gate, and that is a little bit of a problem. I know this is going to turn on here. Let me just kill this page. Boom. That's how you do that. Post 4341. New Jersey also getting into the rink, it seems. At what point should this be classified as murder? Again, pointing out a lot of fun stuff. Department of Health, State of New Jersey. Hi, Philip D. Murphy and Sheila Y. Oliver. So they're pretty much putting together something that's very similar. And, oh, hey, here it is. No patient resident shall be denied readmission or admission to the post-acute care setting solely based on confirmed diagnosis of COVID-19. Are you starting to see a pattern? Because I think that's what the Q is really trying to point out to us is we've got a few different governors that have made some declarations that were very, very bad. They want to blame Trump for everything. Unfortunately, their decision, their signature, their repercussions, they made this choice based off the same information that everybody else was using, except 46 other governors didn't do this. Why? I wonder if maybe there is evil around us. It's kind of interesting. CMS, this is Department of Health and Human Services, Centers for Medical and blah, 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 right? So this was put out March 13th. I just remember jumping in here, something that was kind of funny. So this was guidance for limiting transmission of COVID-19 for nursing homes. This was one of the things that nursing homes were supposed to kind of take a gander at. And this one little paragraph kind of caught me as an interesting little piece of information. Facilities should restrict visitation of all visitors and non-essential healthcare personnel, except for certain compassionate care situations, such as end-of-life situations. In those cases, blah, blah, blah. But facilities should restrict visitation of all visitors. It's okay to bring in COVID-positive patients and not actually know for sure they're COVID positive. That's fine. But we don't want to possibly bring in some random person that actually would make this individual's life better in this situation. We don't want them to have family come see them and maybe even create some sort of scenario where between a glass, they can talk to each other and not put them at risk But no, all visitors, except unless you're COVID positive, and then we definitely are going to load you up. So I think that's interesting as well. 4342, we've got another. At what point should this be reclassified as murder? Again, Perry. Look at this. So now we're talking Gary Cantrell, Deputy Inspector General. So he's requesting that the HHS Office of Investigations immediately commence an independent investigation into whether or not Pennsylvania's Department of Health interim guidance for nursing facility during the COVID-19. So the fourth place, I think if we're keeping track at home, we've got Michigan, we've got New Jersey, we've got New York, and it looks like Pennsylvania is possibly going to fall into this final one. But on March 18th, 2020, Pennsylvania Department of Health published the interim guidance stating nursing care facilities must continue to accept new admissions and receive readmissions for current residents who have been discharged for the hospital who are stable to alleviate the increasing burden in the acute care setting. It is literally the verbatim same thing, I think. I'm pretty sure if I overlaid this on all of these, we would see the same exact thing. 4 different governors. Oddly, they're all Democrat. Might just be a coincidence. I don't know. Maybe they didn't mean to try to kill so many people, but they certainly did a bang-up job. And let's see. Let's go back real quick and see. Pennsylvania, my map skills are... Yeah, so pretty high number of deaths there, right? Where's Michigan? Michigan's not reporting. So Michigan's not even going to let us know what they're doing. Okay, sure. New Jersey, pretty bad, right? I think that's over here, 58.7, right? Isn't that New Jersey? I think that's right. So again, we've got some bad numbers, and it looks like things are not adding up well for some of these governors. USA total pop. This is that thing I was referencing with Japan. Total pop, 328 million, 100,000 deaths during lockdown, right? With a lockdown for many, 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 many weeks. Japan total pop, 126 million, right? Not quite half, close though. COVID-19 deaths there, 850. No lockdown. Granted, they are probably one of the cleanest societies on the planet, but no lockdown. So obviously 2 + 2 = 5? Yeah, it doesn't work, does it? Something's not right. We're either being lied to, they're either intentionally trying to kill people. Something's not right. I don't know what it is. But for some reason, one of the most wealthy nations on this planet with the finest healthcare in the world has some of the worst numbers that we can share. Truth is right in front of all of us. This is true. Post 4344. Got a great Breitbart article here talking about the Minnesota COVID-19 deaths are from nursing home. 81% in Minnesota. Does that match this up here? Yeah, 81% up here. Minnesota. 81 freaking percent of the deaths are because of high-risk people getting it. Super high-risk people. Now, I don't know if this guy also had the same, he's a governor as well, by the way. I don't know if he had the same practice of putting acute people in. I didn't quite read this close enough, maybe. But that being said, I'm going to assume there's probably a commonality there. But, meh. So that was the final post we got. Let's do a quick refresh over here, make sure I didn't miss anything new, which would be good that I didn't. Awesome, because that just makes that annoying noise. So again, we've got a lot going on in the world, folks. A lot of Q posts are happening. If you like what I'm doing here and you want to try to help support the channel, please subscribe for sure. Hit the bell icon for notifications. If you can thumbs up like this, that would be very helpful. And certainly if there's places you could share this or people you can share this with, an extremely helpful way to help my channel. Appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you guys. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.